We're good. So like Matt said, I'm a New Yorker. And I left New York. Welcome. It takes about 10 years to get used to it. I moved here in 2000 with my wife Pam, who is a fourth-generation Idahoan, and my kids are now fifth-generation Idahoan. But when you grow up in New York, you tend to be outspoken. And even though I left New York 27 years ago, sometimes my inner New Yorker creeps out. So when Matt asked me to speak today, I sort of created two slide decks. One was the polite deck, and one was the provocative deck. So need a show of hands. Polite deck? Provocative deck? All right. That's great, because I didn't even load the polite deck. So today's talk is actually not about money at all. We're going to talk about how we can build a more sustainable ecosystem in Boise for startups to thrive. And before I start, good, this is working. My coders would be proud of me. Who hacks here? Who's a coder? Awesome. Great. Who are students? Terrific. So the bulk of the people here are students and hackers. I love it. So before we get started, I owe all of the software developers here an apology. Because a few years ago, I was speaking at an event, and we were talking about resources for startup companies here in Boise. And I made the comment at, I think it was a Tech Boise event, that I thought that the money shouldn't be going to the computer science department, that it should probably be going to the material science department, because we have precious few resources here. And given that Micron's here and the critical mass of material science expertise, that I thought maybe a better idea would be to put the resources towards MS. I was wrong. And I apologize to every coder here. My comment was largely before the cloud changed the landscape forever for how to start a business. As Bob talked about earlier, today coders are leading the biggest startup revolution since the web emerged. And many of today's leaders in the software industry were in diapers when that happened. So before we get started on how we're going to do this, I want to tell you, I see a lot of friends in the audience, but I see a lot of new faces, which is really cool. It's fun to see the community growing. But a little bit about our firm, Highway 12 Ventures. I started it in 2000. I moved out here with Pam. We've raised $100 million over 2 funds. We're focused on the region. We're a geographically focused fund. We're not vertically focused or thematic based. We're looking for the most promising, high-growth companies in the region. And in our careers, my partners, George Mulhern and Phil Reed and Glenn Michael, have been on both sides of dozens and dozens and dozens of M&A transactions. We've had a lot of experience buying and selling companies. Here's a map of where we've invested over the last 10 years. That represents 33 investments over 10 years. As you can see, we stick to our knitting. Overwhelmingly, our capital is put to work in Idaho, Utah, and Colorado. And we're starting to do a little bit more in the Rocky Mountain Venture Capital Association footprint. This is the fastest growing region in the country. It has been for the last decade. We expect it to be for the next 20 years. All the data suggests that, and that's our entire investment thesis is. We're going to see a disproportionate amount of wins in startup technology companies in this region. I want to go through a couple of our investments. I've heard a couple of times and read in a couple of blogs that Highway 12 Ventures doesn't invest in seed stage opportunities, or they're not doing the couple of $100,000 and a couple of guys in a garage like the HP story. That's just not true. Of our last dozen investments, I want to go through 6 of them. We invested in a Missoula company that had 4 employees. We gave them $500,000. All they had was a prototype for text messaging for real estate agents. SendGrid came out of the TechStars program in Boulder, which we're going to talk a little bit more about today. An email delivery platform, 3 employees, $400,000. Everlater, 2 kids, came up with a killer idea for a travel blog. We'll talk about that a little bit later. In early 20s, they had a couple of wireframes. We gave them $350,000. Keep going. Kapost, wireframes, 3 employees, $300,000. GutCheck, 2 employees. A really good idea about doing for qualitative research what SurveyMonkey's done for quantitative research. And you may have read lately about our investment in robotics. A couple of 22-year-old kids came up with some really interesting robotic software to control, with a smartphone, control a sphere and many other things as they iterate. And by the way, of the 6 companies that that I just went through, 5 of the 6 founders are under 30 years old. So for the next 30 minutes or so, I want to ask everybody to suspend your beliefs about the town we love so much. We're going to turn off the Pollyanna bullshit that we read all the time about what a great place this is to start a company. And we're only going to deal in truisms today. When I moved here in 2000, all 6 of these companies were thriving. Corporate philanthropy was strong. People were moving here in droves. They were going to build a 25-story tower at 8th and Main. Our city was thriving. This is what it looks like today, just 10 years later. All those companies are much smaller. Some of them are gone. And lots of jobs have been lost. Depending upon which source you read, that's 15 to 20,000 high-paying jobs that have disappeared from Boise in the last 10 years. That's serious stuff. None of these jobs are coming back, folks. And let's face it, between this and the real estate market, the last decade's been pretty tough on good old Boise. Well, we've had a couple of bright spots. So how can we, sitting in this room today, kickstart our beloved town? What are we going to do to get some more the next generation of great companies in Idaho? I want to start our journey with our neighbors to the south, Utah. In the last 5 years, these 5 technology giants have put huge operations in the state of Utah. Over 1,000 tech jobs have been created, and over $1 billion has been invested in the state of Utah by these 5 companies. Boise's recruitment efforts haven't been quite as successful. This is from the website of the Boise Valley Economic Partnership. We've recruited Bob's Bike Trailers, the Mission Aviation Fellowship, and a dance theater. And all of this is a little questionable because a lot of people take credit for bringing those 3 companies here. And of course, if you go to their website, they talk about how they've raised awareness. But yeah, we get lots and lots of this. Forbes and Wall Street, and Money Magazine, and National Geographic love to talk about what a great place Boise is. It's a great place to live and work, right? This is just bullshit, folks. It's a load of crap. There's a new list every single day. These lists are utterly meaningless. And I hear everyone in the social media community backslapping about these lists. Last month, and this one kills me. Another day, another list. Boise's landing near the top of yet another ranking. This time as one of the most socially networked cities in the U.S. All this means is we're sitting up at night updating our Facebook pages. This is not news. It's like congratulating ourselves for finally converting our CDs into MP3s. As a matter of fact, it's more damaging because it's masking many of the important challenges that we have in creating jobs. And the whole social media thing is just a thorn in my side. I love Carl's talk. It's important, and companies need to understand that social media is part of it. But it's a platform, folks. If you want to understand how to use social media for your business, read this book. This guy turned his dad's liquor store in Brooklyn into a $60 million business using social media. Seriously. It's an awesome read. Go pick it up. End of story. That's enough. Now let's look at some of our neighbors and the accolades that really mean something. In Business Week, Boulder, Colorado, 100,000 people, half our size. Top 10 cities for startups. I'm incredibly lucky in my career that I get to visit the most promising startup communities in the country. This is one of them. New York Times, front of the business section. Boulder, half our size. Magnet for high-tech startups. There's a lot of similarities between Boulder and Boise, and we're going to talk about them. Now back to Salt Lake City. University of Utah, #1 in the country for the last 2 years in tech startup spinouts. #1 in the country. More than Stanford, more than MIT 2 years in a row. 25 technology companies spun out of the University of Utah last year. That's more than the history of the state of Idaho. I could show you dozens more articles like this. So now, Boise Valley Economic Partnership is going to go out and raise another $4 million. They've already spent $5 million, and you saw the results. They're going to go take ads out in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the travel journals and talk about what a great place this is to live and work. Let's talk about recruiting companies versus growing them. There's a reason why we can't lure tech giants to Boise. I want to show you a couple of quotes from local CEOs of startups about the engineering environment here in Boise. Brian Conrad, CEO of Meal Ticket, one of the really cool startups here in town. I'm going to read a couple of these because they're long. This is Bob Locken, who spoke earlier. Early in ProClarity's life, we could find the software talent we needed. As we grew, we started winning numerous national awards and recognitions. In theory, that should have made it easier to attract talent, but as we grew, the number of engineers we were trying to hire also grew, and growth became more and more difficult. Imagine a race car accelerating through its gears while an increasingly larger drag chute forms tied to the vehicle. Brian Woodings, who's going to talk on the next panel. I want to read this one too. Pete Gombert, CEO of Ballyhoo. Finding quality engineers in Boise is our most significant risk for growth. It takes Ballyhoo about 6 weeks to fill most positions we post for. However, it typically takes us 6 to 9 months to find a quality engineer. This creates significant concerns about our ability to maintain our core engineering presence in Idaho as we grow. Clay Young, Innovis Solar. There's lots of great places to live, right? So what often tips the balance for top engineering talent is a critical mass of exciting companies to work for. Idaho just hasn't achieved that critical mass yet. And for me, Idaho just doesn't have the volume of quality engineering talent necessary to lure today's tech giants that are going to create high-paying jobs. So what could we do with another $4 million? I'm extremely fortunate and proud that I've been on BSU's engineering advisory board for the last 5 years, and I've had a front row seat to what happens when you invest in education. In 2004, the Micron Foundation gave a very generous gift of $2 million to accelerate our burgeoning material science program. This allowed them to recruit 6 world-class professors. It gave the university several years to fund the ongoing program. And today, the material science program department actually employs 100 people. The quality of the faculty that they were able to recruit is simply world-class. And the total research dollars that they've been able to pull down inside the university from federal institutions ranks among the highest in the nations. Last year, 2010, the material science department constituted 18% of BSU's total new research budget. 18%. Today, this is a blink of an eye, guys. This is 5 years, right? From a $2 million gift, we now have 80 students going to 120, 40 students in the graduate program, and we are now the largest material science department in the Northwest. $2 million. BSU now wants to do the same exact thing with the computer science department. Data visualization is a critical component of how data is analyzed. I realize that dollars are scarce. But if the Treasure Valley employers are going to commit $4 million to take out ads in the New York Times, and we saw what $2 million did and is doing, I ask you, do we want more of this or this? Your employers are funding this. I'm not saying the people running BVEP are bad people. They're not. They're passionate about Boise and they care about Boise. I'm saying spending another $4 million for advertising and luring companies is a bad idea. It's a flawed strategy. We should be investing in our future. Let's take the money and create the Boise Valley Job Creation Fund and put $2 million in the computer science department and find some other good ideas to grow jobs here in the Treasure Valley. Sort of halftime, intermission. We doing all right on time? You're doing good. Good. Not halfway. All right. There's the best times, there's the worst times. Who read Tale of Two Cities? Great book, right? Okay, we're going to talk about two cities. Why has Salt Lake succeeded? Utah is reaping the rewards of decades of investments in math and science, computer science, engineering. This is just one example. I want to go through this. It's worth going through. The state invested $50 million, a one-time investment for buildings in the U-Star program. They had a $40 million match from the universities. By the way, this was about 5 or 6 years ago. The public created $111 million in bonds to support this and $23 million more for research teams. There is an ongoing annual $15 million investment from the state in R&D. There's an ongoing annual $4 million investment fund, $4 million a year from the state to invest in the tech spin-outs that come out of the universities. As Jay mentioned in his opening talk, the Idaho Technology Council is working on something very similar, and I've been a strong proponent since Jay and I first met 18 months ago about doing this. But this is going to take years, folks. We know what's going on with education and funding in the state. This is not a short-term solution. It's something we have to do to keep pace, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. As a result of what's happened in the state of Utah, their economic development folks did a report, and they took away that for every $1 million they invested in research and development, 22 high-paying tech-related jobs were created. So why has Boulder succeeded? Completely different. Boulder succeeded because they have the most awesome startup community I've ever seen, and I've been all around the country in lots of different towns. This is last year's TechStars class. Who's heard of TechStars? Raise your hand. Okay, about half of you. It's a mentorship-driven, community-based accelerator program that is sweeping the nation. It is now, TechStars has expanded to Seattle, Boston, and New York. If you follow me on Twitter or read our blog, you know we talk about it all the time. It's now part of President Obama's Startup America program. I've been a mentor at the Boulder class of TechStars for the last couple of summers, and it's the greatest phenomenon I've ever seen in my career to enable startups to succeed. But it's not just community, it's mentorship. These are friends of mine, Ryan and Todd and Howard and Tom and Pete and Paul. These guys are all running startup software companies. They're busy guys, but they take the time to work with the next generation of startup CEOs and founders and coders. They graciously give their time to the others, both in TechStars and in other programs in Boulder. And there is a bigger sense of community in Boulder than any place I've ever been. They haven't invested, there's a great university there, Colorado University, terrific, but that's not the lightning rod of what's going on here. It's the developers. It's all you guys who code. It was a revolution from within, and without a doubt, Boulder is the hottest startup town in America right now. Also, they've got a very collegial angel community. I'm really proud that my partner Phil and Mary Givens and Kevin Leonard 5 years ago, about five years ago, started the Boise Angel Alliance and the Boise Angel Fund. It was long overdue that we had a group of angels working together to fund startups. But like everything else, there's growing pains. And our Angel Alliance and our angels are going through some of those themselves. They need to learn to collaborate a little bit more and take a longer-term view, in my opinion. You can't optimize transactions. You need to support entrepreneurs. And if there are any members of the Angel Alliance that are here, you know what I'm talking about. So how does this flow into investments? Let's talk about the dollars, Matt. This is the last, 6 years of venture capital dollars that have flowed in to Idaho. Down here is the yellow. Everyone see this? That's because it's so small. So way down here at the bottom, there's a little sliver, and this is us, pretty much. This is mostly Highway 12 investments in the state of Idaho over the last few years. There's been a couple of outside firms, but not many. This is Utah. Picture gets more interesting. Adding Colorado, and now here's Idaho. Okay? Colorado's averaged $600–700 million a year in venture capital investments. We've averaged about 5 to 10. We see at Highway 12 Ventures, even though all 4 of our partners are here in Boise, we see 20 times as many business plans from Utah companies as we do Idaho companies, and we live here. We see 50 times as many from Colorado. Great, Mark. So what are we going to do? I'm glad you asked. These are my kids. This is Sophie and Cameron. They're approaching their teen years, and I love them dearly. They're 5th-generation Idahoans. Their great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, homesteaded off the Oregon Trail in Pocatello, Idaho, and I'm really proud. I've been here 11 years, and it's starting to feel like home, and I'm really proud of the state, and I want to see great things happen in the startup community. But I want my kids to go out, and I want them to graduate high school and go see the world and see what it's all about. And then I want them to come back here and raise their families. And I want them to have a terrific economy when they get back in 10 years. And that's all it's going to take is 10 years for us to do this. How are we going to do it? Gary Michael taught me this, and it's one of my favorite acronyms I've ever seen. Copy and steal everything. We're going to do it through community and mentorship. If we can start building more of this, we can make huge strides. It's free. We don't need the government's help. Not that they could help us. Everyone in this room can contribute. Every single person in this room can be a part of the startup community. And this alone will dramatically improve the ecosystem for startups. This is Pearl Street. Can everybody see this? This is Pearl Street in Boulder. Raise your hand if you've been on Pearl Street. Okay, a lot of you, right? It's awesome. Pedestrian mall, all these people watching this guy with the ball on his nose. But up here, for me, this is what's cool. See all these brownstones? They're all filled with startups. All of them. And I pull into Boulder for 48 hours, and I park myself at the Boulderado, one of the greatest old hotels in the world. I'd love to see the Huff Building become an old hotel again. And I walk to every meeting. I have 12 meetings in 2 days, and I walk to every startup meeting. Some of these brownstones have 2-3 startups in one office. And everybody eats lunch at the same place. All the startup guys know each other. And the sense of community on Pearl Street, if you walk down Pearl Street in the summertime, this is what you see. This is what I see. And it's awesome. And the landlords cooperate. They take equity for rent from startups for the first year. They give them a chance, and they bet on the community. They bet on the community winning. Unfortunately, this is the most recognizable part of 8th Street. Of course, I'm being glib here, but 10 years? Come on, folks. We need to do something here. But for 1 day a week, Boise gets it. For 1 day a week in the summer, doesn't this look kind of familiar? We've got the brownstones here. We have a sense of community. We can do the same exact thing on 8th Street. Shut it down to traffic, cobblestone it, get the no chains. Get the chains out of there. We have so many great local entrepreneurs. And then fill all these with startups. Get them all together. Do you see the similarities? So as I sat down to make my PowerPoint deck, we're in the Hoff Building. Highway 12, we've been there 10 years, and I love it. It's a great place. But we need more startups downtown. I know startups in Eagle, and I know I'm sorry, I'm totally downtown Boise-centric. And I've seen what happens when all the startups are there close and working together. As a matter of fact, Bob Locken, who recently moved downtown, he and I had dinner with Mayor Beater and Phil Cushlin, the head of the CCDC, this past summer, and we talked about this very idea. and we met with Skip Oppenheimer as one of the landlords, and we talked about the idea of getting all the landlords to make this startup alley. Bannock to Bodo, cut it off to traffic. Create a walkway down to Bodo to connect Bannock to downtown. This isn't hard. This is easy stuff. All this takes is a few people, like you, Bill, to make this happen. I'm pointing to Bill, the wonderful new head of our chamber. Get the landlords excited about this. They win in the long term, big time, if we can create a startup community that's filled up and down 8th Street. What else am I excited about, and how are we going to do it? I'm super excited about the Idaho Technology Council. Jay Larson came into my office 18 months ago and pitched me the idea about the ITC. And about halfway through his presentation, I said I'm in. Because we've been members, my partners and I have been members of the Utah Technology Council for the last 10 years. And when Jay told me that he was working with Rich Nelson, the founder of the Utah Technology Council, and modeling it directly after what they were doing, it was a slam dunk. As a matter of fact, Highway 12 Ventures was the first paying member of the Idaho Technology Council. But I'm also Jay's biggest proponent and biggest critic. We've had some epic battles over the last 18 months. I think he spends too much time talking to legislators. They got their hands full. I think for the next couple of years, the Idaho Technology Council needs to focus on more stuff like this. More peer-to-peer meetings. More marketers meeting with marketers. Finance guys meeting with finance guys. Coders meeting with coders. And it's starting to happen. Also, we got too many old people on the board. We need guys like Ryan Woodings on the board. Who's heard of the Tire Swing Project? Just a couple of people. This is super exciting. My friend Jonathan Fishman is working on this. I, again, met with the mayor and a few people in the startup community last year to talk about Mayor Beer wanted to get an incubator or accelerator going downtown. And I said, whoa, 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 we don't have enough companies to have an incubator. We got to go one level down. And there's a phenomenon going around the country called shared work, what are they called? Co-working facilities. There's one in San Francisco called Dog Patch Labs. They're sprouting up all over the country. And it's like a petri dish. So before you even get the startups, you get all the coders working together. Over 30% of technology workers today don't go to an office. They work from home. They work in coffee shops. So you create a co-working facility for all our coders to hang out together. And you give them free coffee and a ping pong table and big couches and free Wi-Fi. And you give them, you charge them a nominal amount, $99 a month. So they have a home. And all of a sudden, ideas start germinating. It's simple stuff, and it really works. And Jonathan, stand up so everyone can see you, Jonathan. Jonathan walked into my office 2 years ago, and Jonathan Fishman, and he said, I'm thinking about moving to Boise. I'm from California. What can you tell me about the startup community? Can you make some introductions for me? And I said the same thing to Jonathan. I say to every single person who walks in my office, when you move here, I'll help, because there's lots of people here who need the help. And a year later, Jonathan comes walking in my office and said, I'm here. And for the last year, I've watched Jonathan meet with startup after startup. He's had a great, successful career in California, and he's helping them. He hasn't asked for anything. He's just consulting. He's not charging anybody. He's just diving in and helping. He's heading up this. He's working on the cohort series for ITC, and he's a hero. I mean, we need more Jonathan Fishmans diving in and helping out. This is the cohort series that I was referring to. This is once a month, Pete Gombert from Ballyhoo and Jonathan and other members of the ITC, and I'm sure I'm leaving a few of you out. I apologize. But they're getting a dozen startup CEOs together to talk about the issues that they're facing and help each other. We need to do this for marketing. We need to do this for finance. We need to do it for sales. More peer-to-peer. That's the biggest contribution that the ITC could make right now. How else can we build community? This is the Boulder Open Coffee Club. Members of the startup community gather once a month, the last Friday of every month, to work on the issues faced. Don't let the conversation end at events like this. So once a month, they all get together. So I'm excited to announce that Ryan Woodings and I are founding the Boise Open Coffee Club. Starting on Friday, April 29th at Big City Coffee, Ryan and I are going to host, you're buying your own coffee. But we're going to facilitate conversations and keep this dialogue going. If you're going to complain, don't come. Positive energy only. All right? We'll get a Facebook page going. Carl, maybe you can do that. But I'm really excited about this. I think it's great when you get people in the community meeting more often to talk about the issues. Okay, more startups downtown and coffee. What else, Mark? I know what you're thinking. Be a mentor. Be a mentor. I know most of you are probably saying to yourselves, I'm not a mentor. What am I going to mentor? Where's J.D. Mullen? There he is. J.D. Mullen works for a big tech company, Sybase, that has a presence here in Boise. I brought David Cohen, the founder of Techstars, to Boise last year to speak, and J.D. Mullen was in the audience. And he was inspired by what he heard about how Boulder succeeded. And one of the things David kept talking about was how everybody can be a mentor. So this is J.D.'s blog post. I want to read this. I don't plan on leaving my corporate job anytime soon, but I'm fascinated with the software startup story. David's presentation helped me realize my position in the community might be as a mentor. I want to contribute, and mentoring seems like the most immediate way to get involved. Unbelievable. I want to keep reading from this. I can provide architecture and framework suggestions, data feedback in general. Have you heard of or have you considered types of conversations? I can help you locate and evaluate contractors. I can review and test the code contractors, deliver it, on and on. He talks about what he can do to help. And then he starts the Computer Science Extra Series for the Idaho Technology Council. This guy's not in a startup. He didn't think he could be a mentor, but I don't know anybody who's contributed more for nothing in return than JD. And JD, you're my fucking hero. That's awesome. Find a mentor. Don't be shy. I had some amazing mentors early in my career. Phil Reed, my partner, is still trying to work with me and fix some problems. Contact people you respect and ask for help. More often than not, they'll give it to you. And then finally, all you coders and all you students, start something. Do you really want to work in an environment like this? Or something like this? Or this? This is one of our startups. There are no excuses. It is easier than ever to start a software company. Please don't tell me that it's too risky. I understand risk. I moved here in 2000. I had a pregnant wife and a 1-year-old, 2 puppies. I had 2 years savings in the bank when I moved here. It took me 2 years of meeting with over 300 people to raise a $25 million venture capital firm. There's a nit on a gnat's ass in venture capital. And it took me 2 years. We burned through our entire life savings trying to get Highway 12 off the ground. I understand about risk. The risk is not trying. If you're bright and you can code, you can start a company. So I'm going to show you an example. These are my friends Nate and Natty. Remember I talked about Everlater, the travel blog, a little bit earlier that we funded out of Techstars last year? This is Nate and Natty 2 years ago in Patagonia. They were both working at big financial companies, and they were born and raised in Boulder. And one day Nate just snaps. He's like, I can't do this anymore. And Nate and Natty had known they were best friends since kindergarten. And they're at different big financial companies. And Nate calls Natty and says, Nate, I just quit. I'm going around the world with a backpack on. And Natty's like, are you crazy? So Nate takes off. And 3 months later, Nate calls Natty. He says, Nate, I'm on the Arabian Sea. There's hot chicks everywhere. Quit your job. Come on, come with me. And Natty did. And they took a year and backpacked around. They had made a little bit of money. They had about a year's worth of living expenses. And they took off. And what they found out was that sharing your experience of traveling with loved ones and friends sucks. Facebook sucks for it. Blogs are terrible. It's really hard to share your travel experiences online. Despite all that's out there, there's no really elegant, easy way when traveling, real time, to share that experience. So they started a company called Everlater. And we funded it. We gave them $300,000 to 24-year-old kids. That was a year ago. Here's Nate and Abby in their office in Boulder that they share with 3 other startups, looking down on Pearl Street. They just signed the largest tour operator in the world as a customer. They now have 100,000 customers. These guys didn't even know how to fucking code. They wrote the code themselves. They read the book, Ruby on Rails, and taught themselves how to code. None of you have excuses. They didn't know how to code. A year later, they've got 100,000 customers. And we're going to put another $300,000 in. These guys are awesome. All it took was passion and energy. And lastly, expand your horizon. Expand your horizons. Boise's a vacuum, folks. It's a vacuum geographically and intellectually. Get out of Boise if you're young and smart. Go to some of these conferences. See what startups are like. Follow Techstars on the web. They have a founder series. It's like a reality show, only it's real. Go to TED. It's free. I have TED on my iPad. I watch at least one TED episode a week just to get inspired. Boom Startup is is in the Techstars network. It's an accelerator down in Salt Lake City. If you can't get into Techstars, apply to Boom Startup. Go to South by Southwest once if you're young. If you're old, don't do it if you're my age. It's really hard. But feel the energy and expand your horizons. And if you're not on Twitter, as Carl said, why not? But follow the right people. If you've got paper, write these names down. If not, I'll share them with you. These are just some of the people I follow, and they inspire me all the time. Some of them are venture capitalists. Lila is a social entrepreneur. Katerina is a young woman. She was the founder of Flickr and Hunch. She was like 25 when she started Flickr. Loic is a passionate serial entrepreneur. Jason is all about bootstrapping. He thinks venture capitalists are the devil. I love it. It's fantastic. Mark Bao is 17 years old. He went into Y Combinator. Jesse's a pure developer turned entrepreneur. Chris Dixon is another wonderful entrepreneur. These people, listen to them. It's amazing how they'll inspire you to get to start something. And no more lists, all right? Let's all agree that we're not going to facilitate the spread of this stuff. We're falling further behind. Other regional markets are on fire with startups. Don't listen to the brainwashing. Let's let other people congratulate us. And finally, I'm not a huge fan of business books, but these are the 3 best I've ever read. And if you are a I'm going to leave these right here. This is Do More Faster, the book written by David Cohen and Brad Feld, the founders of Techstars. If you're a coder and you're thinking about, only if you're a coder, come up here. After I talk, they'll be up here. Take one. Incredibly inspiring anecdotes from the software founders. Okay? I've got another 100 or 2 copies in my office. If we run out, just come by. Pardon? Sure. No. Yes, I can. Oh, the list of people on Twitter? Oh, the books? Yeah, this one, Mavericks at Work, is just all about being different. There's stories, I just love this book. There's stories about a gold mine in Canada that open sourced their mines to the scientific community because it was different, because they couldn't find the gold themselves. So they opened it up to the scientific community. And everybody thought they were, how are you going to open source your mines? They did it. It's about Southwest Airlines. It's just, I have gotten some of the best ideas about how to differentiate Highway 12 Ventures from Mavericks at Work. Do More Faster. And then my really good friend, Bo Peabody, you could read this in a long bowel movement. It's really short, but it's one of the best startup books I've ever read. And then finally, be an active part of the community. Get involved and contribute. We need more J.D. Mullins. We need more Jonathan Fishmans and more Martins for doing this. Boulder became the hottest startup town in America in 10 years. 10 years ago, Boulder was exactly like Boise. One VC firm and a couple of startups. And what's really cool is that coders led the revolution in Boulder. Boise can be whatever we want it to be.